What if I told you that wealth isn't counted in money, but in moments that touch your soul? This is the story of a man everyone called poor, yet in the end, he turned out to be the richest person in town. His name was Aurelian, a quiet man who lived in a tiny wooden house at the edge of Maple Street, where the pavement ended and the wildflowers began. The townspeople often pitied him. His clothes were worn, his shoes patched, and his hands carried the marks of years of labor. He worked as a shoemaker, fixing the same pair of boots a dozen times for customers who rarely said thank you. Children sometimes laughed as they passed his workshop, whispering, "That's the poor man who still uses a lantern." But Aurelian never minded. He would just smile, nod politely, and return to his work, humming softly to himself. What no one knew was that behind his weathered face lived a heart richer than gold, and a mind filled with peace no coin could buy. Every evening when his work was done, he would step outside, watch the sunset, and say quietly, "Another beautiful day, and I still have breath to see it." Years ago, Aurelian once had money. Not much, but enough to live comfortably. He'd inherited a small amount after his parents died and opened his shoemaking shop with big dreams. But life, as it often does, tested him. A fire destroyed half his shop, thieves stole what little savings he had, and an illness took his wife far too soon. The world saw a man who'd lost everything. But Aurelian saw a man who still had the gift of living. "If I can still wake up, I haven't lost it all," he told himself every morning. He worked harder, not to rebuild wealth, but to rebuild purpose. And in doing so, he began collecting something far more valuable than coins: gratitude. He became known for helping others quietly. When old Mrs. Lane couldn't pay for her shoes, he fixed them anyway. When children came in with torn slippers, he patched them up and told them, "Just promise me you'll walk towards something good." When a traveler arrived one winter evening with no money, Aurelian gave him his own blanket and slept on the cold floor. The next morning, that traveler wept, saying, "Why would you help me when you have so little?" Aurelian simply smiled and said, "Because little becomes enough when you share it." Word spread slowly about the kind shoemaker, but Aurelian never sought attention. He didn't need the world's praise. He found joy in the quiet satisfaction of giving. One day, the mayor announced a grand charity event for the poor. The wealthy families came dressed in their finest, handing out food baskets for photographs. Aurelian arrived too, not to receive, but to help distribute. Some rich men chuckled when they saw him lifting boxes. "Aurelian," one said mockingly, "you belong in the line receiving aid, not giving it." Aurelian smiled and replied, "Maybe, but I figured the hands that fix shoes can also carry hope." The crowd went silent for a moment, not knowing what to say. That night, the town's newspaper mentioned his name, not in bold letters, but as a small note at the end. A humble shoemaker reminded us that kindness has no income bracket. He never saw the article, but he felt the truth of it. Years passed and the town grew wealthier. New businesses opened, cars replaced bicycles, and fancy stores replaced old ones. Yet Aurelian's tiny workshop stayed the same. People still came, not for perfect shoes, but for the warmth of his words. Parents sent their children to him not just to fix souls, but to learn values. He often told them, "Money can buy shoes, but it can't choose where you walk. Choose wisely." To some, he was just a poor craftsman. To others, he was a quiet philosopher hidden in plain sight. Then, one winter, Aurelian fell ill. The same hands that once stitched leather trembled with weakness. The doctors said he needed rest, but Aurelian smiled weakly. "I've rested enough in my time." As his health declined, the townspeople began to notice how much he had meant to them. The same children who once teased him grew up and brought him food. The businessman whose shoes Aurelian had repaired dozens of times without payment came to visit, eyes full of guilt. "You've done more for this town than any of us," he said. Aurelian shook his head gently. "No, I just did what I could." When he passed away quietly one snowy night, the entire town gathered for his funeral. People who had once ignored him stood with tears in their eyes. The mayor himself spoke. "He owned nothing, yet gave everything. He had no riches, yet left us richer." As they lowered him into the ground, a small envelope was found in his workshop, addressed simply to the people of Mapletown. Inside, written in Aurelian's neat handwriting, were these words: "I wasn't poor. I just owned things money couldn't buy. Peace in my heart, love in my hands, and purpose in my days. If you wish to be rich, give more than you take. That's the only wealth that lasts." Those words spread like a quiet revolution. The town that once measured worth in property began to measure it in kindness. The bakery started giving free bread to the hungry every Sunday. The tailor fixed clothes for children in need. Even the wealthy businessman funded a small shelter in Aurelian's name, calling it the Lantern Home, because Aurelian had once said, "A single lantern can light a whole street if you let it." His little workshop was turned into a community center where people came to talk, share, and remind each other of what truly mattered. Years later, a young reporter visited Mapletown to write about the man who had changed it without ever leaving his street. He interviewed everyone: the mayor, the baker, the children Aurelian had helped. Finally, he asked an old woman what she remembered most about him. She smiled and said, "He never preached, never complained. He just lived with so much gratitude that you couldn't help but feel richer around him." The reporter looked puzzled. But why did everyone call him poor? She chuckled softly, because they never understood that true wealth isn't having more, it's needing less. When the article was published, the headline read, "The Man Who Owned Nothing But Changed Everything." It became one of the most read human stories of the year, reminding people that success without soul is just noise, and that a simple life lived with kindness can echo louder than all the riches in the world. So, long after Aurelian was gone, his spirit lived on in every act of goodness that followed. The children he once helped grew up into compassionate adults, teaching their own kids that being rich isn't about what's in your pocket, but what's in your heart. The town never forgot the man with patched shoes and shining eyes who taught them the truest kind of wealth: gratitude, peace, and purpose. So, when you walk through Maple Street today, you'll see a small wooden sign above the old workshop door that reads, "The Richest Poor in the Town." Beneath it, carved in wood, are Aurelian's final words: "Give more, need less, live fully." And maybe that's what real wealth has always been. Not a number, not a name, but a legacy of kindness that never runs out. Because when you leave the world a little better than you found it, you are never poor to begin with. If this story inspired you and reminded you what true wealth really means, don't forget to subscribe to Wisdom Life and like, comment, and share this video to spread a little more light and kindness in the world.